What's up, fellas? Welcome to a brand new episode of The Sports Student. My name's Wendell Epps, aka The Sports Student. Today is a special episode for two big reasons. Number one, this is the season 1 finale of a Sports Student interview series. And number two, my guest for this season's finale is a very special guest. It is none other than NBA player JJ Redick. JJ was very kind enough to take some time out of his day to come and chat with me, and I just couldn't be more grateful to have had the opportunity to actually interview him. So without further ado, this is a Sports Student interview with JJ Redick. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Sports Student. My name is Wendell Epps. Today, I am delighted to be joined by a very special guest. I have JJ Redick with me. JJ, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Love what you're doing, and just happy to be here and chat with you for a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So first thing first, how's your summer been going? How's the off-season life treating you?
It's been great. It's been great. I would say I'm living my best life right now, if you know what I mean. It's a lot of golf, a lot of time with my kids. I just spent most of the morning playing 2-versus-1 soccer. There's like a basketball court that has soccer goals built in where we live. So I just taken down to the park, and they beat me 2 games in a row. I'm not the best soccer player in the world, and I also had flip-flops on. Yeah, just being a dad and hanging out with my family. It's been great.
That's awesome to hear. And I'm curious to know, during the season in the NBA, how much downtime is there? Is there such thing as downtime during the NBA season?
There is. I would say my days during the season are very structured. And even, on a non-game day, there's structure to the day. Occasionally, you have an off day where you don't need to get treatment. You don't need to go in or anything like that. And you can sort of get away and escape and, hang out with the kids or go to dinner with your wife. And there's that element. But then the other element is on the road, there's a lot of downtime, because there's a lot of time spent on a bus, an airplane, hotel rooms. I go crazy in hotel rooms. So I got to get out. I got to walk around the city. I got to go to find a coffee bar or something. So that's the downtime that is annoying, is when you're on the road, not playing, and you're away from your family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because the road trips are crazy, I'm sure.
They get long. It's I always joke, when you have very young kids. My kids are not going to be 7 and 5 in 2 weeks, so they're past the toddler age. But when they're super young, and you're not sleeping as much because they're getting up or they're not sleeping through the night. You got to go on a road trip for, let's say, 8 days. Those first 2 nights are really nice. They're really nice. You can sleep in. It's great. But then by day 3, you're oh man, I just want to be home. I just want to get home. So yeah, that's as you get older and you play long enough, that becomes one of the challenges to navigate as a professional athlete. Is you're so committed to your craft, and you're required and obligated to be diligent about all that stuff, but at the same time, your heart sometimes is home.
Yeah, totally. And I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time now. You're one of those players that has just been consistent throughout your entire career. Has it felt like you've been in the NBA for as long as you've been in the NBA for?
Yeah, it's felt like a long time. I sort of pinched myself thinking that I got to play, I've got to play 15 years and hopefully we can squeak out a few more. But I look back and I'm the person I was at Duke or the person I was at high school, it's a lifetime ago. It's almost half my life has been in the NBA. It's the life I've known for, 15 plus years now. So it's been a long ride. And you look back at the Clippers days.
Yeah.
And I'm I was forever ago, and so it's a blessing though to have played this long, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I kind of want to take you back to your old days of playing basketball, before the NBA, even before Duke. What was it like in high school growing up? What was that like playing ball?
I think for me, basketball was like a drug, and I was so addicted to it. And talking earlier about taking my kids to the park. Like my mom, if she had errands to run in town, she would just drop me at the park and I'd just go play. I'd look for a game or I'd shoot by myself. Once I get done with my schoolwork, I went out in the backyard. I shot hoops. When I got to high school, I had a key to the gym. I'd go in before school. I'd go in during my free period. If I had to walk through a gym to get to a class and somebody was shooting basketball, I'd grab the basketball and shoot it. I'd go run up and touch the rim. It's like everything, my whole life existence now for 25, 30 years has been about the game. And so it's always been that for me. It's always been like that thing that I like. It's just been such a passion, and it's been that way. I would say, I started playing when I was 8, but it's been that way since I was like 12. When I quit baseball at the beginning of 7th grade, like I was just all in on basketball the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, being passionate about the game is definitely something that you need in the NBA for sure. And like, what are your opinions now? And like, with social media kind of taking over, like there's a different route. There's like a lot of different routes you can take to the NBA. Do you still feel like college is that best route to take to go to the NBA?
No, it's not. It's not. And I think we'll see some sort of transformation in the next 5 to 10 years about the structure of, high level athletes at a young age that have potential to be professionals. I think the traditional route is gone, where you go to college for 3 or 4 years like they used to do, and even I did. I think if you're identified early on, I think you have the option to do overtime elite at 16 and go do that for a couple of years. You have the option to do the G League. You have the option to go overseas. And more guys are taking advantage of that. And I think eventually, professionally, I think the idea should be we should have a similar sort of farm system or club system that they have in European soccer. I was actually golfing with this guy he's a hedge fund guy. He lives in London, but he's American. He lives in London, and he's got this 12-year-old son who's like a baller at football, soccer, whatever. He's a baller, and he's in Chris. He has a contract with Crystal Palace, which is like a mid-tier Premier League team. He's 12 years old. He's got a professional contract, and my buddies that I played with that played in Europe, they all were professional at 15 or 16 years old. So I think that's probably where we're headed, and the effect that has on college basketball, I don't know. It remains to be seen with Texas and Oklahoma trying to leave conferences. Like maybe there's a separate league for, the 20 or 30 best athletic programs. I don't know how it's going to work, but if kids can go earn a living, and it's real money now, G League Elite is $500K, overtime elite is $100K. Like if you had told me I could make $100,000 at 16 years old or $500K at 18 years old, I'm probably taking that, man. I'm probably taking that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's crazy like how much money like players are making nowadays. And at the time of recording this, like Luka Doncic, your teammate from this past season, just signed that insane contract yesterday. I want to know what were your thoughts on this year's Olympics with basketball and like Team USA, and then also Luka's performance with Slovenia?
I was impressed. I think my takeaway from the USA basketball team was I was just impressed with every guy that committed to doing that. Because I again, we're paid handsomely, so we can't ever complain, and that's fine. But I know what those guys have been through over the last year between the bubble, the quick turnaround. You had 3 guys that played in the finals and then got on a plane immediately and went to Tokyo to play. So I'm just so impressed with those guys committing to doing that, and happy that they won an Olympic gold. Like Kevin Durant, man, like what does that guy have to prove? He doesn't have anything to prove. He just likes to hoop, and he goes out and he has 30 or 29 in the gold medal game. Like it's just, I'm just impressed. It's clearly a love of the game thing and a love of the country thing. It's just, I'm so impressed by those guys that they made that commitment.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, this year, it's like international competition is only getting stronger too. So there's a lot of guys facing. Like, I'm really proud, especially like the 3 guys that did play in the finals. Chris Middleton, Devin Booker, and then especially Jrue Holiday too. I mean, Jrue Holiday came into the Olympics and he was playing out of his mind.
Yeah, no, he was great. And like, again, I got to chat with Jrue later today, but like he had a son in October. Like he's got a daughter, JT, who's friends with my youngest son. But I'm like, this guy just played an entire NBA season, most of it away from his family, wins a championship. Like there's no reason for him to do that, and he was awesome. I mean, I think we've all seen over the last year just how valuable of a player Jrue is. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he definitely is. I would say one of the players, more underrated players, but I feel like this year he was really starting to finally get the recognition that he deserves, because the Bucks were on the big stage.
Yeah. I mean, I would think I would give my podcast some credit because basically last season when the all defensive team came out and, I just basically like every guy I had on the podcast for like 6 months. I was like, "Is Jrue Holiday the best defender you've seen?" Yes, yeah. Jrue Holiday is the best. And it's like it's like A-listers, Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant. I'm joking, of course. My podcast, Jrue is amazing, and I'm happy that he's getting the recognition and credit he deserves. And he signed an extension with Milwaukee, so he's like he's knighted, he's goated. It's great. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Couldn't happen to a better dude, and
and
for a better family, like the entire Holiday family, not just his wife and his kids, but like their whole crew, his brothers, his parents. They're just wonderful people, and I'm just very, very happy for them.
Yeah, definitely, certainly a great family, and like kind of want to talk about like your time playing the NBA, like playing with all these different kinds of teammates. What is it like when there's a new player that comes to your team? What is that whole like process like? How is it like introducing yourself? I mean, you guys obviously probably know each other because guys playing the league, but how is that like?
It's probably like any other introduction. I try to have a relationship with all my teammates in some capacity, and obviously you're going to be closer with others, but you try to get to know them, where they're from, do they have kids, do they have a girlfriend, do they have a wife, brothers or sisters, like whatever. You just kind of small details, and then you build from there. But like I always tell people, like, everybody makes a big deal of like drama in the NBA, and like I think the media hypes it up at times. Players can be trolls and hype it up at times, but like it's just normal in the NBA. There's 15 to 17 guys who all have pretty healthy egos competing for a finite amount of resources, i.e. playing time, i.e. shots, i.e. contracts. Like it's competition on a daily level or on a daily basis. And, you also have to toe that line. So that's all going on. Then you have to toe that line and be a great teammate and be a professional. And that's sort of where I think I carved out a niche where I've been able to sort of navigate all these different teams and all these different teammates. Because like ultimately, like the reason I love basketball is because it's a team sport, and the feeling you get of a connecting play or a connecting moment or getting back in the locker room after a game and sharing these moments with your teammates. Like that's the beautiful part of the game to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many great players in the NBA, so many great players to play with, and it's just a great setting overall. And like I kind of want to take you back to like your Orlando days too, because that was like when you really got to set yourself apart and make a name for yourself. Like looking back on those days, like just like what was that experience like playing for the Magic and like playing like on a winning team that was consistently in it every year?
Yeah, I mean, it was great, and honestly, I got off to a slower start in my career than I would have liked, but looking back, it was probably good for me. And I grew a lot as a person, and I was forced to grow a lot as a player. And I changed my body, and I got in better shape, and I started lifting weights, and taking that part of it seriously. And I think if I had not gone through that, I would have had a good career. I can shoot the shit out of the ball. I would be fine. But I think that allowed me to have longevity because I learned how to be a professional. I learned how to be diligent. And, I was talking the other day about my golf game, and I'm like, if I wasn't golfing right now almost every day, like I'd be in the gym 6 days a week, twice a day. And that's been my existence for 15 years, in the off season. It's just like go, 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 go. and I learned to do that early on in my career in Orlando. And then the other part of that was getting to play in those big games. Like
Yeah.
my third year, Courtney Lee breaks his face on Dwight's elbow, or whatever, and in Game 5 of the Philly series in the first round. So I get to start Game 6 on the road, a closeout game. I get to start 7 straight games against the Celtics, the defending champs. I'm chasing Ray Allen around, and because of that experience, that ultimately is what gave me confidence that I could sort of stick in the league and I can compete at the highest level. I mean, I guarded Kobe Bryant in the finals. Like, it's those are like the moments. Those are the moments that I remember early on in my career, was just like being in those big games, those big moments on the big stage. And playing well, and even the next year in 2010 when we made the conference finals, I had a really good conference finals against the Celtics, and that was sort of my fourth year, was sort of the year that I felt like, all right, I really belong and I can be a good player in this league. And then ultimately it was just about opportunity, which I got when I my last year in Orlando, and then when I got to LA, and Doc believed in me to make me a full-time starter, and that was sort of the turning point in the second half, or the second stage of my career.
Yeah, definitely. And like that Orlando team you were on, especially like the 08-09 season and the 09-10, like that was a deep team. There was a lot of talent on that roster.
We had a great bench, and I think the 2010 team, if I remember right, like that was probably one of the funnest teams. There's like 3 or 4 teams that I've been on that were like the funnest teams. And that year we had Matt Barnes and Jason Williams, White Chocolate, Gortat. I think Beatrice was still on the team, who was just the funniest dude ever. Ryan Anderson. Like we had such a fun group and a deep team, and Dwight at the time, I think, was, he's probably a top 4 player in the league. It probably doesn't get enough credit for how good he was in Orlando. People have sort of, he's just played so long, you forget, like, 10, 12 years ago, Dwight was a top 5 player, easy. So we, everything sort of revolved around him, but we had great leadership in Jameer and Richard, and a really deep team and a really fun team. That group was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you're totally right about Dwight Howard. He's a guy that definitely a Hall of Famer. No doubt.
First ballot.
First ballot Hall of Famer.
That's not even no question.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, should have won an MVP, I think, at least once in his career.
Look, I this is not to take anything away from Derrick Rose, but like Dwight in 2011 was the MVP. He should have won. If you look at like historical models of what, a win shares and, wins above replacement player, like by every advanced metric, he was the MVP that year. But, so much of the MVP is about narrative, and D Rose and the Bulls had this incredible turnaround and won 62 games, I think, that year. And it was Tibbs' first year, and they go to the conference finals. Had a great team. I was supposed to be on that team. I signed with that team, but Orlando matched. I was restricted, and Orlando matched. So I actually would have been on that team, which is it's probably one of the funniest what ifs of my career.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy how like free agency, especially now, social media, like free agency is always super crazy. And then you got these blockbuster trades. I want to know, like, in your time in the NBA, what has been the craziest like trade or signing that you've seen?
I mean, I would definitely LeBron going to the Heat, and then the Heatles all teaming up. I mean, I was on my honeymoon. I was a free agent as well. That was when I signed with Chicago. And so many teams had hoarded cap space that summer, and LeBron took like 10 days to decide. And so I'm on my honeymoon and I'm freaking out because, I think I had a BlackBerry at the time. And so I'm like getting emails from teams, but they're all just like on standby waiting to see what LeBron does. And once he chose not to go to Chicago started using up their cap space. And that's ultimately how I think Carlos Boozer went there, and then they used some of that money for Kyle Korver and Ronnie Brewer, and then I was allocated some of that cap space as well. But that was the one, and that was sort of, if you look at the dynasties that I played against in my career, that was the beginning of their dynasty, and that ultimately transitioned and then to the Warriors dynasty. I would say that one. You know, it's funny you bring up free agency though. It's like it's just such an event now. The trade deadline and free. It's like people like the casual. I actually think this like the casual fans and the diehard fans like they almost like transactions and the draft and all this shit. They like it more than the actual games. It's like I think it's like the fantasy league thing. Everybody's a couch GM now. But it's I enjoy it too. I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy it too. I enjoy just refreshing my feed and waiting on those Woj bombs on my alerts to hit because it's fun and part of it too. Like I don't know who you're a fan of, but like part of it like if you're a fan base of X team. Yeah. And you get a trade or you sign a guy in free agency, like all of a sudden you have hope, you have promise, of maybe a bright future. Mm-hmm. But the reality is like there's a bunch of teams that aren't very good and every year, what I mean?
Yeah, no, I feel that. Yeah.
Who are you? What's your team?
Wizards, man. Diehard
Wizards. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So Bradley Beal, man, that's my guy. I know you had him on your podcast and huge fan of Brad. I mean, the way he plays on the floor is incredible. And that guy can get buckets like straight up.
He's gotten so much better. And that's not a knock on who he was when he first came in the league, but he's gotten so much better off the dribble and creating his own shot and really creating space. I think he uses his dribble package to create space better than anyone. Especially, he's not a huge guy. He's like 6'4". He's my size, got longer wingspan than me, but he just does such a great job with his dribble to create space and get a shot off.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I mean, he's balling, and he's staying loyal to DC right now, which is great. So, when you enter the NBA though, do you feel like you still were able to play in that sort of like old school era, where it was more of like a physical game in a sense?
I had a couple years there. I played against those Pistons teams with like Ben Wallace and Rashid and Chauncey and Rip and Tayshaun. Like those were physical basketball games. And, they talked a lot of shit. And then there was the Celtics team with like PJ Brown and James Posey and KG and Perk and Big Baby. Not a lot of spacing. It's just, this is the thing that I think people don't quite understand. Like, it's not just that the rules have changed a little bit in terms of hand checking and physicality and impeding, offensive player movement. It's that there's so much space. It's impossible to guard people. It's the best defenders in the world can't stay in front of guys. There's just too much space. Go back and watch some of those like mid 2000s or even the 90s and look at the spacing. Like I did this whole thing last year where I was like watching Jordan's highlights on YouTube, and I'd watch and he'd have these like 54-point games, right? And partially back then there was something called, it was real illegal defense. Like you couldn't stand there and be in a help position. You either had to double or you had to be hugged up on your man. But spacing wise, Jordan would be ISO'd like on the right wing. There would be a guy in the post on the right block. There would be a guy in the dunker on the left block, and there'd be a guy at the free throw line. His teammates. Like there was no space back then. And that's why like the scores were 82-78 in the playoffs. And now it's like the basket, the lane, everything's open. You have shooting everywhere. And it's the threat of the 3-point shot that really has changed how basketball's played. And you need a guy like Luka, a guy like James Harden, who can beat guys off the dribble and make great passes and are big enough to see things. And then you just need shooting, and you can score 120 points a game every single night. It's impossible to guard.
It's crazy. It's like if a team doesn't score over 100 points now, it's like they're not playing well. It's like it's so much.
Well, I mean, too, it's like it's just a lot of it. Truthfully, is just math. Like it's just math. If you shoot 42-point shots from the mid range, you're going to hit probably historically around 40% of those, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm terrible at math, but that's like 32 points. You'd hit 16 shots, right? Right. Well, if you shoot the same amount of shots in their threes and you make 35%, let's say, that's going to beat 32 points every time. You
Mhm.
know, so it's just a matter of math. And you know, I think that's why you've seen guys like Joe Harris and Duncan Robinson, you know, just have incredible value, and bigs too. Bigs who can space the floor will always have a place because you know they're dragging guys like Rudy Gobert out of the paint,
Yeah.
and so it's really that's been the biggest change for me is just like there wasn't like great shot variation back when I first started. It was like post ups and like ISO mid range shots, like that was the game. And then now it's just spacing. How do we shoot layups, and how do we create the threat of the layup to get a 3-pointer, and and the two just go hand in hand. It's back and forth. Your defense is on their toes. Do I want to give up three? Do I want to give up the paint? And you play this cat and mouse game all game long, and hopefully a team shoots 28% from three and not 33%.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy how the NBA is, just changing. It seems like year by year. And like, I'm curious to know too, because I feel like we're sort of entering like the end of an era, sort of in terms of like faces of the league, guys like LeBron, Steph Curry, Harden, Westbrook, they're getting up there in age. So I'm curious to know for you, like 5 to 10 years from now, who do you think are going to be like those 5 or 6 players that are sort of going to be like the faces of the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Steph and LeBron would probably argue they have a few years left of greatness.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think in 5 years, like it's probably pretty safe to say that the best players of my generation won't be the best players, you know, currently in the NBA in 5 years, right? So it's Kawhi, Kevin Durant, LeBron, Steph, like those guys. I don't want to leave anybody out, but those guys are obviously the best players of my generation, of my era, I should say. Luka for sure. Luka's, I think he's going to be one of the greatest players ever.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I think he's going to end up being the best player in the league in the next year, 2 years. Like he's that good. We forget how young Devin Booker is, and he showed us how good he is. Giannis is 26, so in 5 years, I still probably think Giannis is going to be one of the faces of the NBA. And there's a ton of young guys coming into the league now that are just these guys. They've had basketball trainers since they were 12. They know every. Like I tried to do these Euro steps last off season. I was trying to get my layup package and do these, and I'm like, I didn't learn the footwork when I was 12. And you get these kids now. I've watched these videos on YouTube where these 13-year-olds are doing this footwork like I struggle with because I didn't learn it at that age. It's sort of like a golf swing. Right. So all these guys come in the league now, they can do everything. And so I don't know, beyond Luka, Giannis, Devin Booker, like I would of course Zion. I mean, Zion, obviously that's an obvious one. I'd have to look at a list of players, but I got to play with probably in 5 years, the 2 best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
Which are Zion and Luka this year. And they're both amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know that had to be a great pleasure to play with guys like that. And like, also like mentoring players. What year of the NBA do you think was like the year where you're like, okay, I can consider myself to be like a mentor to these younger players?
My last year in Orlando, my 7th year. We had a really young team. They traded Dwight. It was me, Turk, and Jameer were like the only holdovers. And then everybody else was on, rookie contracts, in their second year. We had a bunch of rookies that year. And, I got the directive basically from the coaching staff and from Rob Hennigan, just like, can you be helpful? And I was like, yeah. It was my first time where I was one of the older guys, and I just fucking enjoyed it so much. I'm sorry for the language, but I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, no, I love that.
And then when I got to the Clippers, we were an older team. We were all sort of in the same stage of life where we were having kids and getting married and all this stuff. So that was a little different. We didn't have a lot of young guys on those teams, and Doc would bring in, vets on minimum contracts. So we didn't have a ton of young guys. We had Reggie Bullock and CJ Wilcox. And then I think Bryce Johnson for maybe a year, and Austin, of course. Austin was young at the time. So the last 4 years, I mean, that's been a huge pleasure for me, just to be a mentor and to be a voice of reason in the locker room, to be a liaison between the coaching staff and the player, the front office and player. It's been a really enjoyable part of the experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a great honor, a great privilege to be able to be in that position. And like you were fortunate enough to make the playoffs basically every year, until in the 2019-2020 season. So like, how is that like, like every year sort of like being on a team where you're like, all right, we're in it to win it sort of thing.
Yeah, it's in a normal season, you lose your last, or you don't make the playoffs. Your last game's like April 12th or April 13th, and I've never experienced just like I don't know what it's like. Like there's teams where like you win 25 games and you're eliminated from the playoffs on March 2nd, and so you have like 6 weeks of runway to your off season. Like I don't know that feeling, because even the year I didn't make it, we were right in the hunt, and I think we would have made it had the season not got postponed in March. We were on a hot streak, and our schedule was very favorable. And so the bubble was sort of a toss-up. It was a toss-up of like who was engaged and who wanted to be there. And it was obviously taxing on us mentally, with everything going on last summer, between COVID and all of the social justice stuff. And it was, I think for a lot of guys, it was like, why the fuck are we doing this?
Exactly.
and so it was a toss-up of who was going to get those last two spots, obviously with the play-in too. So I've always like been proud of that stat. I was bummed. I remember we lost to San Antonio on a Sunday, and basically Portland won, which they did later that day. We were eliminated. And I was like emotional locker room, like, fuck, dude, that streak's over.
Really quickly, JJ, I just want to go ahead. I want to end this interview with you, asking you a couple rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, superpower. I would just want Iron Man suit. I just want his suit. Yeah.
What's one food you can't live without?
Oh, one food I can't live without. Oysters. I love oysters.
Very cool. What's your favorite genre of music?
Folk, indie rock.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. What was your favorite and least favorite genre in school growing up?
Favorite was history. Least favorite was probably anything science related, which is funny because I'm like super into science stuff now. I'm like, I wish I could take physics again. That'd be awesome. But yeah, probably anything science related. I hated all the science classes.
Nice. A couple more for you. What's one city that you have not been to but you like to visit someday?
Lisbon in Portugal. That's at the top of my list.
Very cool. If you weren't playing in the NBA, what would you be doing?
Man, it's a great question. If I wasn't playing the NBA, I probably would be a professional baseball pitcher.
Still in the athlete track. Love that. And last question for you here, JJ. What's one fun fact a lot of people do not know about JJ Redick?
I am an aspiring scratch golfer who I had never broken 90 in my life. And in the last 4 rounds, I've gone 86, 89, 89. So I'm trending in the right direction, but I'm still a couple years away from being a scratch golfer.
Love that. All right, JJ. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast today. Seriously, huge fan of yours. I love your podcast too, man. So just keep up the great work. Such an honor to be able to talk with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You're great at this, man. Keep going. I know you're aspiring, so just keep at it, man. You're really good at this.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Great chatting with you, man.
All right. You too, man. Take care.
All
right. All right, fellas. So that was a sports student interview with JJ Redick. Another big shout out to JJ for coming on the podcast today. I mean, seriously, I cannot thank him enough for taking the time out of his day to come and chat with me and just to have an NBA player on my podcast. I mean, wow, that is just crazy to say. Literally, ever since I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting when I was 10 years old, I always told myself how cool it would actually be to be able to interview an NBA player. And JJ Redick was the first NBA player I ever got to interview, and I am just so blessed and grateful I had that opportunity. So yeah, I'm literally like lost for words because it's just crazy. Like interviewing an NBA player as a college student, that is so cool. So I'm just so happy I had that opportunity. But that does conclude today's episode of the Sports Student, ladies and gentlemen. That also concludes season 1 of a Sports Student interview series. This is crazy. I could talk for hours about how thankful I am for everyone's support this summer with this new series that I launched on my podcast. But I'm going to try and just give you guys a short and sweetened version of it here right now. I just want to say thank you. Like, seriously, that's honestly the biggest thing I can say to all of my listeners and watchers out there. For those of you that have been checking out the video podcasts, I just want to say thank you. Like, your support means everything to me. You guys are supporting my dream, whether you all realize it or not. You all are supporting my dream. I want to be a sports broadcaster long term, and you guys have been there for me since day one. I've seen your support. I've seen your wonderful comments on social media, and I just cannot be more grateful for that. So seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all so much for that. And you all motivated me to just keep pushing and get through this whole season. If you guys have been noticing my schedule of uploads, you would have realized that I have uploaded a bunch of episodes consecutively. That's because I'm having so much fun doing this, and I want to be able to have you guys be able to listen to all these amazing people that have been coming on my podcast. I've had some of the most amazing individuals in the sports media industry on my podcast, and their stories, their passions, their ambitions, it is just out of this world, and it is blowing my mind. I mean, when I reach out to all of these 21 guests that I was able to get on season 1 of a Sports Student Interview Series, I had no idea that all 21 of these guests would be so down to earth. They would be so unique in their own ways. They would be so just genuine and real. Literally, I'm just so grateful I had that opportunity to be able to talk with 21 of the most amazing people on planet Earth. Like, literally, I know that sounds like super like, whoa, but it's true. Like, I can't thank them enough. So I'm going to miss doing this. This is the end of season 1. Right now, I'm getting ready to head back to my school in High Point University, and I've got big things to do, getting ready to enter my junior year. But this was a fantastic summer. This was a summer where I accomplished a lot, and I was able to really go really big with this whole podcast series. So just want to go ahead before I officially end this podcast and this season of a Sports Student Interview Series by just giving another big shout out to the 21 guests that came on this season, because without these guests, this whole series would not have been possible. I would just be talking by myself with no one to chat with, no one to ask questions to, but 21 of these amazing people that I'm getting ready to name here, they helped me out, and they made this whole season 1 possible, and they made it as successful as it was. So just want to give a big thank you to Meredith Gorman, Olivia Eisenhower, Brian Tripp, Danny Sarek, Ashley Shamedy, Kara Hammer, Bob Rathbun, Anna Whitty, Haley Hunter, Aaron Summers, Nathan Epstein, Remy Monahan, Lisa Redmond, Valerie Priactor, Sam Rothman, Gabby Hyduke, Sierra Speller, Harris Eisenberg, Maria Trivalpiece, Haley Jordan, and of course the season 1 finale guest, JJ Redick. Thank you guys so much for coming on The Sports Student. Thank you for supporting my dream. Thank you for being there for me, and I just thank you so much. The good news for all of you listeners and watchers out there is that season 2 of a Sports Student Interview Series will be coming very soon. So make sure you guys stay tuned for updates. Follow me on my social media pages so you can get those first exclusive updates about season 2 of a Sports Student Interview Series. You can follow me on my Instagram at w.epps_23. You can also follow me on my sports announcing account on Instagram at WendellEpps_sports announcing. You can follow me on Twitter at Epps_Wendell. And of course, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name, Wendell Epps, and my great face should show up, and you can connect with me if you're not already connected. So thank you guys so much for all of your support. But that'll do it for this episode of a Sports Student Interview with JJ Redick, and this will do it for this season of a Sports Student Interview Series. Again, thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys just are staying safe out there, and that you all just have a fantastic rest of your day whenever you're listening to this. And yeah, I will see you guys in season 2. All right, y'all, take care. Sports Students, signing out. Peace.